Good morning, and thanks for spending some time with Compeer Financial. My name is Jason Gama. I'm the State Insurance Product Officer for our Illinois territory here at Compeer. We wanted to continue the discussion around Prevent Plant, and we are starting to build a library of resources for you, discussion points that will point to you in your direction here towards the end of the presentation today. But today we wanted to just focus in on really what we say are your 5 choices, or the decision that you are making here on June 6th, and what those decisions are and how they work, and hopefully give you some information to make a good decision. So again, we'll jump into really just important dates, and we've continued to press on this slide in our previous recordings, but it's just so very vital to understand the dates on the calendar and where we sit today on the 6th. So again, Compeer Financial covers Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. You can see on those 2 left-hand columns the final plant dates for both corn and soybeans and what those are. Just understand that for Minnesota and Wisconsin, those dates are for the southern half of the state. As you continue to move north into northern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin, those dates do change. So I would just urge you to get with your Compeer crop insurance agent, and they can help you look through the actuarials for the counties that you're in your area to make sure you have the specific date correct. But as you can see, today is June 6th, and we have passed the final plant date really for all 3 of our states that we cover here with Compeer Financial. The 2 columns to the right, again, are that late plant period window. So again, final plant dates for corn and beans on the left-hand side, those are the dates where I have full coverage on my crop as I've planted up into those dates listed there on the left-hand side. If I continue to plant past the final plant date, then I'm into the late plant period, which are the 2 columns to the right. I can continue to do that. The only difference is I'm going to start to lose 1% a day off of my guarantee. So these are the important dates that we have to keep in mind as we're talking about Prevent Plant. But as we sit here today on June 6th, as you can see, we're past the final plant dates for corn. So you can start claiming Prevent Plant right now with your crop insurance agent. Let them know they can turn a loss in for you, and we can start that process of getting you paid for Prevent Plant. Just know a couple of facts here. By turning in a loss today or tomorrow or the next day, does not hold me to Prevent Plant. I can continue to plant into the late plant period if that makes sense for me and my operation. At the end of the day, if I turn a Prevent Plant loss in and I get all my ground planted, I just withdraw the Prevent Plant loss. No harm, no foul. We have a separate resource that talks more about when you can file a timely notice of loss. We'll get into where those exist here in just a little while. So really, as I see it, you've got 5 options or 5 decisions you could make as we sit here on June 6th, okay? Option number 1 is you can continue to plant into the late plant period. That's your first option. So don't claim Prevent Plant at all. You can continue to plant. As I mentioned before, if I do that and plant into that late plant period, I'm going to lose 1% a day off of my guarantee as I plant into that late plant period. Just know that, just a clarification here, if you've got an 85% level policy and you plant into the late plant period, your coverage level doesn't change from 85 to 84 to 83 to 82, et cetera. Your coverage level doesn't get reduced, your guarantee gets reduced. So do the math based off the APH on your database times the coverage level that you've selected, and that guarantee will get reduced by 1% a day as you plant into the late plant period. If you wait and plant all the way until the end of the late plant period and past, then that 1% a day is going to eventually stop, and you'll be capped out, or it will go to the Prevent Plant coverage level, which is 55% on corn, 60% on beans, unless you've done the Prevent Plant buy-up, which had to have been done by March 15th. So a little bit of clarification there on how that works as you continue to plant into the late plant period. Option 2 is I am claiming Prevent Plant on my corn, and I either leave the ground idle or I plant an approved cover crop into that ground and not hay or graze it until November 1st, If I do those things, then I'm going to get 100% of my prevent plant payment. This is really the initial design of prevent plant, is to leave the ground idle or plant an approved cover crop and not hay or graze it till November 1st. It's also important to note here that these same rules and same choices apply for both corn and soybeans. We're just going to continue to use corn as an example because we have reached the final plant dates for corn as we sit here on June 6th. If you have more questions about cover crops and what's available and allowable there, we have a separate recording dealing with prevent plant and cover crops. And at the end of this presentation, I'll show you, let you know where you can find those resources at. So that's option 2. Option 3 is now I'm going to claim prevent plant on my corn, and I'm going to start to plant a second crop. In this case, we're using soybeans as an example. So I've prevented from planting corn, and I'm coming in with soybeans, but I'm going to plant those soybeans within the late plant period for corn, which would be up and through June 25th before that. If I do that, if I come and prevent plant corn, plant the soybeans, but I plant it within the late plant period for corn, then I'm going to forfeit my prevent plant claim completely. Also, those, just a technicality here, but those soybeans do become the first insured crop in that case. And why is this the case? Why do you forfeit your prevent plant claim? The idea here is if you could plant soybeans within the corn late plant period, you could have planted corn within the corn late plant period. So I hope that makes sense. An option at your disposal, just know that you are going to forfeit that prevent plant corn claim if you plant the beans during the late plant period for corn after you have claimed prevent plant on that corn. Option 4 is now I'm going to claim prevent plant on my corn. I'm going to plant my soybeans, but I'm going to wait to plant those soybeans until June 26th, which is after the late plant period for corn. You can remember on that first slide, we talked about what that range was on the late plant period. So if I do this, I'm going to basically get hit over the head twice. The first blow I'm going to take is I'm only going to receive 35% of the prevent plant payment that I have coming to me. So whatever that prevent plant payment would have been, I'm only going to get 35% of it. And the second blow, which I would contest is the worst of the two, is I'm going to receive a yield plug penalty in my APH, which is going to be equal to 60% of my approved yield. Why is that a problem? Well, it drops my APH in general because I've got this penalty plug in my APH, but also it's going to stick with me for the next 10 years. If I've got a crop rotation on that database as well for the next 20 years. So that's a blow that does leave a mark and will stick with you for a while. Just some clarification here too then, if you do this, those soybeans must be insured. If you have soybeans insured on your policy already, these soybeans following the prevent plant corn must be insured. And honestly, depending on when you get them in this case, you're doing it after June 26th, you're going to have a reduction in guarantee on those late planted soybeans because they're planted past the final plant date for soybeans. Okay. Option 5 is really the same as option 4. The major difference here is I've got those beans planted later after the final plant period for soybeans. And if I do that, I'm still going to get hit over the head twice. I got my prevent plant payments reduced to 35%. I get the yield plug penalty in my APH of 60% of my approved yield. But the only difference here is I can choose to not insure those soybeans. There's some dates that I have there listed. This is when I'm putting in soybeans after the late plant period for soybeans. So in Minnesota, that'd be starting with July 6th, Wisconsin, July 11th. And then in Illinois, we've got 2 different timelines running because we have different final plant dates and final plant periods based off counties within Illinois. It could be July 11th or July 16th, depending on which county you're in. So those are really your 5 options or decisions or choices that we think you have at this point. Number 1 is I can continue to plant, not claim prevent plant. Okay, I will get a reduction in my guarantee, but in a lot of cases that still makes more sense financially than it does to claim prevent plant. So I would just urge you to get with your Compeer insurance officer, your agent, to discuss really your situation, your specific case, and talk about when it makes sense to continue to plant within the late plant period or claim prevent plant. Option 2 is I claim prevent plant, but I leave the ground idle, or I plant an approved cover crop and not hay or graze it till November 1st. In that option, I'm going to get 100% of my prevent plant payment. Option 3 is I'm going to claim prevent plant corn. I'm going to follow that with planted soybeans, but I plant the soybeans early. I plant them within the late plant period of that corn. If I do that, I'm going to forfeit my prevent plant claim completely. The soybeans become the first insured crop. Again, the reason there is if you could plant soybeans within the late plant period for corn, you could have planted corn in the late plant period for corn. Option 4 is I've claimed prevent plant. I'm following it with a planted soybeans, but I wait until after that late plant period for corn, so starting on June 26th. If I do that, I'm going to get hit over the head twice, right? The first blow is going to be a reduced indemnity. I'm going to get only 35% of that prevent plant payment. The second blow is I get that APH penalty plug, yield plug, in my database of 60% of my APH, or of my approved yield. Those two blows are happening. Option 5, really the difference here is I have the prevent plant corn. I'm following it with planted soybeans, but I don't plant those soybeans until after the late plant period for soybeans, which gets out into those July dates that we talked about. If I do all of that, then the choice just becomes I can choose not to insure those soybeans, but I still get hit over the head twice on my prevent plant corn payment, a reduced indemnity to 35% and the yield plug in my APH of 60% of my approved yield. As you can see here on this slide, we have more resources out at our website, www.compeer.com/preventplant. We have a more in-depth recording on prevent plant in general. We've got a recording on cover crops and how they work, and also obviously this one dealing with your 5 choices as we see them here on June 6th. We appreciate your business. We are here to be a resource for you. Do not hesitate to call and help us walk you through your specific case and situation so that we can be making the best decision. You can be making the best decision on your farm. We appreciate your time. Please give us a call if we can do anything to help. Thanks and have a great day.